I've already feel like I've talked too much, which means now Jennifer gets what is happening. But I'm so happy to present Jennifer Pringle from BC Co-op and Sitka Evergreen. She's going to be presenting on getting the most out of statistical categories, which I love. But before we do that, I do want to say thank you to our champion sponsors. We have Unique Management, Stat Courier, Midwest Tape, Equinox Open Library Initiative, and the Evergreen Collaborative Development Initiative. Without them, this wouldn't be happening. So thanks to all of them. You can check them out on the conference sponsor page. Jennifer, it's you.
Thank you, Ruth.
You are
I
so
will
welcome.
start sharing. And I will start sharing the right thing. And sorry, just 1 second. It's not giving me the option of what I shared a moment ago. Let's try this. Apparently the test broke it, Ruth.
I mean, that feels relatable. um, so one thing you wait, did you make a sound of affirmation? No. Okay.
No, just a second. Oh, okay. I think I'm going to have to try sharing and then unsharing. So you'll see me in duplicate for a moment.
Oh, yes, we haven't seen
Let
an
me,
Infinity stream for a while, so that was pretty awesome.
let me try sharing. There we go. Okay. Now that we've got the technical difficulties out of the way,
Beautiful.
and Ruth, I'm going to rely on you for anything in the chat because I
Absolutely.
cannot see it.
Yep, I will do chat. If you have questions, y'all just put them in there, and I will try not to interrupt inappropriately. I will do it appropriately.
Excellent. So welcome everybody to Getting the Most Out of Your StatCats. As Ruth said, I'm Jennifer Pringle, the training lead for co-op support at the BC Libraries Cooperative. And today we're going to talk about everything StatCat. There is going to be some audience participation as well as a bad cat joke. So we're going to start. Oh, and sorry, there I am and my email. And I'm happy to answer questions after if people want to reach out. So we're going to start by talking about what StatCats are before going into the two types of StatCats, which is patron and items. And then we're going to finish by talking a little bit about the future of StatCats or the potential future of StatCats. And throughout, we'll be talking about some known issues and some reports that you could run. So what is a StatCat? And here's the bad cat joke. It is not, it is not a stationary cat. And there you have the obligatory cat picture for the conference. So statistical categories, often referred to as StatCats, enable you to capture information in the patron and item records that doesn't fit into an existing field. And that information can then be displayed to staff and patrons and reported on. And patron and item StatCats each have their own administrative interface with slightly different options between the two. And once you have your StatCat set up through those admin interfaces, library staff can work with patron StatCats when registering or editing patron records and item StatCats through the holdings editor. So we're going to start with patron StatCats, and I'm going to take us into Evergreen now. So this is our Sitka training server, which is running Evergreen 314.4-ish. We've backported, I think, a good chunk of 0.5 now. All patron records on this server are fake. So here I have an almost complete patron registration. And at the very bottom, we can see the fields where we can apply the stat cats or change their values. And the stat cats display differently depending on how they've been set up. So let's look at the different options, and then we're going to look at actually how to set those up on the admin side. So I have two very similar stat cats here to demonstrate the differences. One is tax area and one is taxation area. This is the most common patron stat cat we have in our consortium, as many of our libraries need to be able to report on what tax area their patrons fall into. Some of our libraries get funds from funds per patrons from regional districts to provide library services to patrons who fall outside of their city or town boundaries. And this is the first piece of audience participation, is I would love to hear what patron stat cats your library or libraries in your consortium use. So if you want to put those into the chat as we look at the patron stat cats here. So we have the two that I've set up here. The first one, tax area, is yellow, which indicates that it's required. So we can't save this patron record without entering a value. So from the drop-down menu, which is a predefined list set up in the admin interface, I'm going to hit city here. And so that's now filled in. I can now save this account. Before I do that, though, we're going to look at the taxation area one below. This one has free text. So you can see there's a field. It might not be super defined on your screen, but there's a field beside the drop-down list where you can enter free text. Now, free text can complicate reporting and make things a lot more time-consuming. So I recommend not using free text by default and considering it very carefully before turning it on for a stat cat. If staff enter free text instead of selecting a value from that predetermined list, you can end up with a lot of variations on the same piece of data. So if I entered city without a capital C and save that, and you can see from my list here, it is city with a capital C. But if through free text, I enter it without that capital C, I now have a value for city with a capital C and city without a capital C, and those will be reported on differently. So they won't be counted together. Now, one current issue that we have in StatCats is that you can't type into the field. So you can't do the type to select to be able to filter down to an option. Now, with a list that I have here where it's just 3 selections, that's not a big deal. But some libraries or some consortia have much longer lists. For example, we have, for one of our provinces, a list that contains every single municipality in that province. And that's a very lengthy list that all libraries in that province are having to go through every time they are registering a patron. So that is currently an issue. There is a bug for it. And we've got that bug right here. And I have all the bugs I'm going to show today are listed in my slideshow. So will be available as part of the slides if people want to go look at them, add comments, or add heat. So we have a bug for this. I did test in the experimental circulation module, and you can type to select in there. So a fix for it when we get moved to the new module is coming, but there is also a bug looking for it to be fixed in the current interface. Another issue is if we were to save this, you can come back in to your patron record and you can edit the value, but you can't completely remove it through the staff client. So if you filled in a field that you didn't mean to for StatCats, to remove that value completely, you have to go to somebody who has database access for your library. And that one also, we have a bug in Launchpad for that. So I'm just going to copy my barcode here. And then I'm going to save my patron. And now we're going to go to circulation and checkout. And we're going to pull up that patron account. So based on what I have set here, you can see I actually have these stat cats and their values showing as part of the patron summary. So we can see that information at a glance without having to go into edit. I'm not going to show it for this one, but if you also have the ability to have this appear in the personal information section in my account for your patrons. So if you want them to be able to see the information you have in the StatCat, whether it's what tax area they fall into, or if you do an email opt-in for promotional emails, you can have that value display for your patrons to see. Now, if we go to administration and local administration, and we're going to go into statistical categories editor patron. So this is the admin side where we can actually set up our stat cats for our patrons. So anyone with appropriate permissions can access this. In our consortium, that is local system administrators who can come in. And they can create and edit the stat cats, and they can add values to them. You can have stat cats set for your library, or if you're multi-branch for your system. You can also have stat cats further up your org tree. So if I go to public libraries here, and because I am logged in at Maple, I can't see the stat cats, but I could have one set at that public library level. And actually, sorry, I'm realizing that my example is on items, so we'll see that when we look at items. But the example I talked about earlier with our municipality stat cat is set at the provincial level. So all libraries in that province can see that stat cat when they register a patron. Just going to switch that back to Maple here. So if I want to create a new stat cat, all I need to do is click on New Statistical Category Editor Patron. I'm going to put in the name. We'll say this is an email opt-in. Make sure that's set to Maple. I have the option of whether it's required or not. So can the account be saved if there's no value in there? As I mentioned, it can be opaque visible. So that appears in the personal information and preferences page in my account if you set that to yes. As we saw earlier, it can show in the user summary. And you have that option for whether you want it to be free text or not. Now, the last three options are ones that I couldn't find a lot of information about and that we don't use. The checkout archive, my understanding is that it archives it with aged circs. If that's not the case and somebody knows better, I would love to know more information about that so we can make the documentation around it a bit more robust. And also there's two fields for putting in information if it should do SIP things. And I'm very interested to know if anyone uses StatCats with SIP, and if so, what you do with it. There's minimal information about this in the Evergreen docs. So I'm going to say this one isn't required, is opaque visible, is in the user summary. I'm going to say free text, no. We're not going to archive it. We're not going to touch the SIP fields. And we're going to click Save. So we now have it appear in our list. And if I go to Entries, I can now add my entries. And I'm going to click New Statistical Category Entry Patron. And I can just put in our value is going to be yes. and another one is no. So they're quite simple to set up initially, and then you can come back in and add additional entries if there are more things that you want to add to that list over time. I'm going to pause here for a moment, one, to confirm, Ruth, that you can still hear and see me.
I can.
Excellent. And did we have anything in the chat about what people are using patron StatCats for?
So Katie is saying that she believes that some of the Pales libraries are limiting digital services via StatCats.
Interesting.
So I'm assuming that would, well, not assuming, I know that that would be via SIP. Um, and there's some comment between people on how they're using it, or a question and being answered by colleagues.
Excellent.
So that's kind of where we're at right now.
Perfect. So the last thing I'll say about patron StatCats before we move over to item StatCats is that there is one other bug I want to highlight, and that is the default patron StatCat value that used to exist in the old version of the statistical categories admin interface. So there used to be functionality where for a StatCat, you could say, this is the default value, and that would automatically be filled in on the patron registration form. And then you could adjust it to a different value if you wished. There is a bug that captures that functionality hasn't made it into the Angular StatCat admin interface for patrons. So if that is something that your library used or would like to use, make sure you take a look at the Launchpad bug. And if you have access or if you want to make an account to go in, you can add heat to that bug as well as comments. Because that's, one piece that has disappeared with the web client.
There are a couple comments in here. Gary from Kenton County says that they use StatCats to identify daycares and schools for outreach services. And then Taryn from Georgia says that they use StatCats to see if patrons have opted in to be added to the library's newsletters.
Excellent. I'm always interested to know what other people are using it for as well. And if you didn't guess, I'm going to be asking the same question for item StatCats. So we're going to switch over to item StatCats now. And I've got us in the staff catalog, and we're going to go into the holdings editor. So I'm going to click on edit here to open up that holdings editor. And just scroll down here so I can see my StatCats. So you can see I have quite a few different item StatCats, and they're currently being filtered by Maple Library by default. And if I come over to the Preferences tab, there is a setting where you can say what org unit you want to filter by default. I'll come back to the Holdings tab. And I can change that filter. So if I want to see any applicable filters across the consortium, you can see it adds one that's set at our BC Public Library level for provincial grants. There is a bug related to the filtering, which I'll highlight, and that is if you're a multi-branch library, you can't see StatCats belonging to other branches other than the one you're currently logged into. So we don't see it with Maple, our training library here, because it's a single branch. But if you had multiple branches, you'd only be able to see StatCats that are for the branch you're currently logged in at, as well as ancestors of it. So you'd be able to see any set at the system, or consortia level, or any other higher levels that you have. Um, so that has been reported as a bug, and there's been some discussion in the bug about how it should work. But I think we're not quite finished with the discussion there. So if that's something that affects you in cataloging, take a look at that bug. So as you have probably noticed, like patron stat cats, required stat cats for items also show, we're going to call it goldenrod. And we can pick the values we want from the list. So we need to pick one for a required one. I'm going to say there's no protection for weeding here. We could also pick one for vendor. And we could go through and pick values for any other stat cat that we want applied to this particular item. And if I go apply all, save and edit, those stat cats are now saved. And it's opened me up onto my next tab, which is item status. So I've got 3 items here. If I select all of them and go to actions and edit items, it takes me into the holdings editor where I can edit all 3. Now, if we click on, for instance, the vendor here, I can say, okay, I want to update the vendor, but I don't actually want to update the one that's white hots. I want to leave that, but let's change the other 2 to donation. I'll hit apply, but it's actually updated all 3. So that is an existing bug where you can't actually change values for stat cats in bulk unless you are wanting to update all of the items to have the same value for the stat cat. And again, we have a bug that has already been filed for that. Now, also like patron stat cats, item stat cats can be opaque visible. So if I come into my public catalog here, you can see here is the StatCat information for the grant. This item was paid for by the Maple Community Foundation, and that displays in the public catalog so that users get that information. Now, before we look at the admin side, we're doing the audience participation again. So what do you use item stat cats for? From looking through our library, our consortium, our libraries use it for things like collection or genre, donations or donors, grants, languages, programs, video ratings, weeding protection. And the big one that we see, especially with our non-acquisitions libraries, is using it for vendor. So I'd love to hear if there are other things libraries are using it for. Anything coming into the chat, Ruth?
There are several things. So
Excellent.
I'm going to go back here and get my mouse working in the way that it should be. So several things from Georgia, but not only for item stat cats. Several people have mentioned using it for annual reporting and collection development. There's audience level, and there was also a comment in here that things that they had previously used mark fields for, they're using for StatCats because they're a little bit more flexible in terms of how libraries are actually categorizing and shelving their materials.
And it's easier to report on StatCats a little bit than mark
Yes,
fields.
I would say 150% easier.
It's still challenging sometimes, but I think StatCats can be easier to report on than mark fields
Yes,
for sure.
very much so. A lot of state reporting is mentioned in here. And let me, we found if a library changed I'll get back to that one. Um, so there is a question: is there a preference on is it better to use an opaque visible stat cat for things like donations, or to use an item note or tag?
I think it comes down to whether you want to be able to report on it. Um, and others who do more reporting may be able to speak to this as well. But I think item stat cats, there's more, um, you can report on that. Whereas and especially because it will have, um, if you're not, well, for items, you can't use free text. So you have the predetermined list, which you don't get for item notes. I will say we don't use item tags at all because there's some scoping issues that just make it not usable for our consortium yet. Um, so for us, between item notes and stat cats, item stat cats are the ones that can be reported on. So if you want to be able to pull that information.
And I will say that, and I understand how in BC you can't use those because of idiosyncrasies for your consortium as well as
Mhm.
what you mentioned uh, in terms of the tags. You can report on tags depending on how your system is set up, and then it really does come down to what works best. Um, I think that there probably is a little bit more flexibility as far as stat cats go than there is with tags, but you can make them both work depending on what works best for you locally.
I think
Uh,
that's an excellent answer, Ruth.
it feels like a non-answer, but
But I mean, it comes back to, there's so much of Evergreen where you can do things multiple ways,
mhm.
and it's all about figuring out which of the ways to accomplish a similar or same thing works best for your library or consortium.
And there is going to be, we're going to talk just a little bit about it, and there may be in another session, there's going to be some talk about the rework of item tags, which may change the calculus for that kind of preference a little bit. But then again, it may not. Uh,
We're
yeah,
very excited to see the rework for item tags and see if it resolves the issues that are keeping us from using it.
I'm excited to know too. So then Mary Llewellyn says, we found if a library changed their stat cap preference from consortia level to their library, the required state library stat cat disappeared and they were able to add their item. Oh,
Oh,
okay. So they found a loophole, maybe unintentional loophole.
yeah.
Um,
That
okay.
sounds like a bug to me.
Yeah, I was gonna say I'd try that again and see if that's a bug.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, and if I come back into the holdings editor here, and let's see if I can clear that one. Oh, the Mary was saying the required one was higher up.
yeah,
Okay, so let's flip over to the admin side of StatCats.
it sounds like there may also be a permissions issue going on there. Like, how are they able to change that
Well, so
from a
we're,
consortium
yeah.
level, or who is it that did it? I guess is maybe is a question.
Well,
Who did
so
that?
we've gone into administration and local administration. We're going into the statistical categories editor for items now. Um, and very similar to the patron side, um, we have a number of different ones that are already there. If I change my scope here, I can see that I have, like I said, I have a provincial one. And interestingly enough, I can also see um, one of the ones owned by another branch, or sorry, by another library. So that is something to look into because these two are owned um, by a library that the account I'm logged in with doesn't have um,
Right.
permissions for.
Not in that
So I
chain
think
of
I just
descendancy.
live discovered a new bug.
I mean, cool, but
Yeah,
also that's I mean,
yeah.
it's cool that you discovered it.
But I mean, this is what this
Yeah, I
session
know.
is about, is here's
It's
what you
true.
can do with stat cats, here's their limitations, and what
Let's
do we
find.
want to do in the future. So
Yes.
it's all part of it.
And then there's a
Um,
question from
yeah,
Karen too. If the option to show StatCats in the public catalog is enabled, does that mean that they are keyword searchable? I
that
don't
is
think
a
so.
really good question. I don't think so either.
I think they could be if that was added to Field Mapper, I believe, or
Yeah, I
something
think it would
analogous to
require
Field Mapper.
development.
Yeah.
Um, so we've got my provincial level one here. Um, so if I come back into the holdings, well, I showed in the holdings editor, you can
Oh,
scope to see the provincial level or just the library level. Um, and yeah, I can see everybody in the consortium's StatCats, which is a bug. So if we, for the purposes of this, I'm going to switch back to Maple. So we're just seeing the Maple ones. If I want to create a new one, I can go new statistical category editor item, put in the name of what I want. Let's do uh, uh, age. So if we want more precise um, age ranges, then we can do through the mark editor. I'm going to say this one isn't required. I could say it was opaque visible if I wanted. So maybe this is something I want visible for patrons so they can see the intended ages for some of these resources. Again, we have the checkout archive, which I'm going to say no in this case. And we have the fields for SIP. So I'm going to click save. And again, like with patrons, if we go into entries there, we can add our entries. 6 months plus. One year, and so on. So I'm just going to hit return to go back. And I have my stat cats there now. As you see, item stat cats have fewer options than patron ones. Obviously, they're not going to show up in the patron summary. Maybe at some point in the future, we want them to show in the staff catalog in some form. And they also don't have the option for free text. And I think as far as reporting goes, it makes sense to not have that option for free text for item stat cats. Now I'm going to go back to the Public Library Federation level, and I'm actually going to change my operator quickly because we're going to see if we can.
and while you're doing that,
Yep.
Jeremy has a lovely question that is rich in possibility. It
All
says,
right.
any special tricks for retroactively putting in data for existing items or patrons if adding a new stat cat?
So my trick would be to ask my lovely text to do it for the library. When we switched over to a municipal stat cat for one of our provinces, we did a lot of cleanup. We had somebody from their end give us a list of what cities or towns mapped to what municipalities. And we batch updated patrons to add that stat cat based on what the value was in the city field in their account. It didn't catch everybody. Again, in part comes back to data entry issues. If a city was spelt wrong by one letter, or otherwise unexpected, it wouldn't match. But we were able to batch update, a, a, I think, thousands of patrons, so that libraries were only having to update the ones that didn't match, or the ones that they're registering new. So it's definitely possible. I'd say if you have access to the database or access to somebody who can do it for you in the database, that's going to be a lot easier than trying to open up every item or every patron, to try and add it to them. I'm all for batches. Hopefully that answers the question.
I think so. And there was a lot of helpful information in chat as well. Here to sysadmins and developers in the chat. Um, and then Monica asks, if there's an old item stat cat that you no longer need, does it create any problems to delete it, even if many items have a stat cat
That is
assigned
a
in that category?
that is a great question, and we're going to hold that question because we're going to come to it.
Awesome.
So we will come back to that, I promise. I'm just going to change the provincial grants one here to be required, and save that, and switch back to my other operator. Just going to reload that screen. So we now have provincial grants. Did it change the library? All right, it changed the library. So just bear with me. Apparently the owning library can change on you if you are not double checking that. So show all of our rows. Come on. Provincial grants. Put that back to public libraries. Save. Restore the operator. Refresh one more time. And you can see that I have it filtering to Maple. So if I filter it to the consortium, I now have that required StatCat. If I filter it back to Maple and make a change here. Oh, that one doesn't have any options. So in this case, I'm not getting the buttons activated. So even though I can't see that there's a required StatCat, it is stopping me from saving. I think that's still an issue, because you could spend a lot of time staring at this screen trying to figure out why you can't save. So I think there's definitely a bug, and I'd be curious, Mary, to hear if there's additional steps that people are taking that's allowing them to save without filling in that StatCat.
So this is actually something that was addressed, at least in part, during the templates rework. So it wasn't just the items, alerts, and notes and templates that were reworked. There was a lot of accessibility work done on the holdings editor itself. And while that was happening, some of these things, like that's a bug.
Yeah.
And so I
So
remember
it
that we did have
might be fixed
conversation
in
about this. I
2015.
don't know if it was fixed or not.
I did not see an open bug for this when I was searching for StatCat bugs.
So it may have been one that we just came across, or like that is bad.
Yeah.
Uh,
Let's fix it.
so so I would encourage, because is this 314 that we're on right
This is
now?
314.4-ish.
Okay. And that would have been 315 where that would
Yeah.
have come out. So
So testing of 315 around this is something in my future and possibly in others'
Mm.
futures. Um, so the final piece I'll stay on, I'll say on item stat cats here. And actually, I'm going to go to administration and reports. And we're not going to save our changes here. So we are in the process of recreating all of our Sitka templates, which we share across our entire consortium with our move to 314. But if we go into templates and on our training server, it's Greenland templates. If we go into collection, we have some reports that we currently use with StatCats. So you can see we have a title and item count by shelving location and one statistical category. We also have, if we go into item list by item attributes, on the old system, which still needs to be redone, we have a StatCat copies with selected StatCat entry, which will just list everything that uses a particular StatCat. We have one where you can list based on the active date of the item. And we also have one that counts titles and copies cataloged within the time frame by a copy or an item stat cat and a shelving location. You can tell our report templates in some cases are quite old because the name of that one that hasn't been recreated yet uses copy instead of item. We also have a number of templates for patrons. So we have patron counts, where you can count by profile group and StatCat, as well as being able to list, which I don't think the list ones have been recreated. Oh, here we go. We've got a list of patrons, new patrons registered within a time frame with the StatCat. One item report that I'm currently working on, and you may have noticed the weeding protection item StatCat, is the ability to run weeding reports where you exclude items based on a StatCat value or include items based on a StatCat value so that libraries can designate like local history that they know can't be replaced or rare items or anything else that they know isn't even going to be considered for weeding, even if it isn't circing, so that those just don't show up on the weeding reports, so that you can just exclude them based on the StatCat. So that's something I'm currently working on getting that together.
Okay, so there was
Yep.
a question in here about reports, which I said I'd bring it up if we didn't get to it, and you've gotten to it.
Excellent.
And then there was also a comment about I'd like to know more about the weeding protection. You literally just did that.
Perfect.
Uh,
One of our libraries came up with it, so that's not something that I came up with. One of our libraries created an item StatCat for weeding protection, and I was like, "That is such a great idea."
that's awesome. Let me see. I may have missed it. Nope, there's that. Okay, I
All
think
right.
that
Well, in our final minutes here, we're going to talk about the future of StatCats. And unsurprisingly, probably to everybody, I have a few bugs. um, so almost everything for StatCats are now in Angular, the newer interfaces, with the exception of the patron record. And I did take a look. This is the experimental circulation module in 314. I did take a look at it. There is some functionality currently missing around StatCats. So if we look at the bottom here, we can see it's not indicating that StatCats are required, and there's no free text field, though I think you might be able to write directly in and then save it. I have some more testing I want to do around this. We haven't been doing much with the experimental circulation module yet. So there is more work to come, and we know there's more work to come with the experimental circ module in general. In the admin interface, we didn't touch yet on editing or deleting, though we had that question about it. So it's a great question because that is, oh, sorry, this bug here. So that is a discussion topic currently, because you can't edit or delete stat cats through the web interface. You can delete a stat cat if you haven't assigned any of its entries to an item or a patron. But the moment you have entries that you've assigned, Evergreen won't let you delete it through the staff client anymore. You can edit the parameters of your stat cat, so you can change something from required to not being required, but you can't edit the labels for any of your values. So if you do a typo, you can't delete that. You can't edit that in the staff client. It is possible to do a lot of this through the database right now, but there's a desire to have the ability to do that in the staff client. And what's been raised in this bug here is how should it actually work? So if you edit a stat cat entry, should it update that stat cat on all of the existing items or patrons that use it? If you delete it, should it remove that from all of the items or patrons that use it? And then Tiffany recently raised a question around if she was specifically talking about items. I think the same applies potentially to patrons. So if you go to delete an item stat cat or patron, if that functionality comes into existence, what should it do for deleted items or patrons? Does it go back and change those? Or should we be having a deleted flag for the stat cat entries that can be filtered out? So it's still there, but it's just marked as deleted and is no longer available in the drop-down list. Similar to this, we have a bug for archiving statistical categories. So if you're no longer using one at all. So I think this is a big piece around the future of StatCats, is how we move forward with editing, deleting, and archiving, because I think that functionality is definitely desired. It's just about how we want to implement it, and how we want to move that forward. I will quickly flag 2 other bugs, and then open up for any additional questions. So we have 2 wish list ones that I found. One is a wish list to be able to require a copy stat based on the use of another. So having logic to say, if the value of this stat cat is this, then require this stat cat also be used. Nothing like that currently exists in Evergreen, but it could be very useful. And we also have a wish list for the ability to have StatCat information for items printed on spine and pocket labels. So those 4 bugs, from what I could find in Launchpad, are where StatCats are or could be moving towards in the future.
Can you
Yep.
do you mind to go back to the bug just previously? Yes, that one, so I can
Yep.
jot the number down. We can get those into chat.
They're all on my all on my slides.
Okay. We have very enthusiastic people who are adding heat right now.
Excellent. I love to see heat added to bugs. One thing with searching through it, if you are adding bugs to Evergreen around StatCats, don't forget to include the StatCat tag, which I actually didn't realize existed until I started looking at some of these bugs. I think currently we have 19 bugs tagged with StatCats. So in the world of Evergreen, I think that's not a lot of bugs for the feature. Though I think there's a couple more that we found that we need to add. So yeah, so I'm gonna stop sharing, or actually, wonder if I can switch over here. And as you can see, those bugs are going to be in the slideshow. I'm just going to leave that, and I'm going to see if I can come back over. It might stop my sharing. Nope, it left it this time.
So I don't have any
So
questions right now, but does anybody have any questions or comments?
hopefully this was useful, and people, learned something new.
Absolutely, it was great.
I learned new things putting together the presentation.
I do still hope you'll share the data behind your report templates
Yeah,
um,
so
for item stat
if
cats.
I'm just gonna put it back. Oh, I'm clicking on the display, not on my actual slideshow. There we go. Oh, and that went it away. So I'm just going to throw it into the chat. If anybody is interested in more information about what we have for reports, please send me an email and I can send the information about that.
Awesome. You showed us names for a lot of great StatCat reports. Will those be available in the slides?
Um, you know what? I can add those to the slides.
Thank you.
Just because I just didn't have time before this. But yeah, I will add those to the slides before I pass them on.
Awesome. Thank you so much. We are going into a break of about half an hour, I believe. Yep. Check out the exhibitor hall. There are some, or the expo, I guess it is called here. There are some vendors over there, and then lightning talks will be at 2:30, and those are going to be exhibitor lightning talks today. Thank you, Jennifer. This was a great presentation. I appreciate that and all of your questions, and we'll see y'all at the next thing.
Thank you, Ruth.
My pleasure. Literally my pleasure.